Okay, check the chat. Make sure you check the chat. There is a document with an overview of today's keynote. A good thing to take away. All right, and happy to introduce you to Pam Victor. She is the president and founder of Happier Valley Comedy, the first and only improv theater and training program in Western Mass. Take it away, Pam.
Okay. And I see somebody, by the way, Kelly's asking if you could turn off non-speaker videos. You see that in the chat window?
Oh, I think that's, you can toggle between gallery view and speaker view in the top right. Sorry, I missed that instruction. I had it on speaker view.
All right. So I'm assuming everybody is all set. And if you have any issues, Kelly's going to hang out in here and check the group chat. So he'll be able to help you with any technical stuff. I cannot. I can help you with the comedy stuff. I can help you with the improv stuff. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. As Kelly said, I am a professional improviser. I've been doing that for about 20 years. So my job is basically to get up on stage with my friends and create content out of thin air. And the funny thing is, this is what we're being found, not so funny thing is, this is what we're being found to do or asked to do so much right now. And by the way, before I get too much farther into it, I'm about to tell you a story, but I just forgot. I wanted to tell you that if you have a sheet of paper, you can grab a sheet of paper or something to write something down with, because there's going to be an opportunity for you to make some little notes in a second. So if you wanted to grab that while I'm telling my story and get it ready, that would be cool. I'm going to tell you the story of the Maybe Farmer, which is a story that I think about almost every week. And as an improviser, I use it all the time. It's a very old story. And these days, the last 2-3 weeks, I have been thinking about it pretty much on the hour. So I wanted to share the story of the Maybe Farmer with you. Maybe I want to share the story of the Maybe Farmer with you. Hold on one second. There we go. There was a farmer who lived long, long ago, and he had one young son and just one horse. And one day, his only horse got away. Now, his nosy neighbors came around when they heard that his horse got away, and they came over to the farmer and they said, "Oh no, your only horse got away. Everything is very, very bad. How are you going to bring in the crops? You're not going to have any help around the farm. What terrible luck. It's so bad." And to that, the farmer replied, "Maybe." Now, later that day, the farmer's horse came back, and along with it came a whole herd of wild horses. So where before he only had one horse, now he has many horses. And when the nosy neighbors heard about that, that neighbor came running over and said, "How wonderful, your luck has changed. Everything is very, very good. You're rich. How wonderful." And to that, the farmer replied, "Maybe." Now, later that week, the farmer's young son was training one of the wild horses, and he ended up getting thrown from the horse and breaking his leg really badly. When the nosy neighbor heard about that, they came running over. "Oh no, how terrible. Your luck is bad. Your son is hurt. You're not going to have any help around the farm. Everything is very, very bad." I bet you can guess what the farmer replied. "Maybe." Now, later that week, the army was coming through the countryside, conscripting young men to come with them into the army. And of course, they couldn't take the farmer's son because his leg was broken, so they went along without him. When the nosy neighbor heard about that, he came running over. "How wonderful! Your son is spared. Your luck is good. Everything is very, very good." And the farmer replied, "Maybe." Thank you. Thank you very much. So here we are, standing in the unknown together in March of 2020. It's a crazy ass time, and we have no idea what's going to happen. Some of us are in the position of making something from nothing. And this is what improvisers are trained to do. This is what I've been training and practicing for the last 20 years. This is improv. I get up on stage with nothing and I have to create something. This is improvisation. And we are trained to do this. And now I want to share some of that training with you so you can use some of these skills as well. Because this is improvisation. It's acceptance of the reality of the moment and the agreement to move forward together with positivity. This is the heart of improvisation. This is how I define improvisation: acceptance and agreement. And like it or not, we're all in the place of improvising right now. I want to help you create content on the fly with your colleagues, even when you think it might be impossible. And one of the most important skills that improvisers use in order to do this is to quiet our internal critics and our internal voice of fear. This is what I need to get up on stage and create something out of nothing. And this is what we need right now in order to problem solve and innovate with as much creativity as possible. So this is what I want to talk to you about today. I want to give you skills to quiet the inner critic and the voice of fear so you can focus on problem solving and innovating, accepting the reality of the moment so you can move forward with positivity. My work life changed dramatically last week. I had a theater. I mean, I still have a theater in theory, but it's closed, right? We are not teaching classes. We are not doing shows. I am not doing very many professional development jobs. All our revenue streams, almost all our revenue streams have dried up. Now what? My training as an improviser has taught me to accept the reality of that moment and now figure out how we can move forward with positivity. Now, when this shitstorm started, of course, I had lots of inner critics making a lot of noise in my brain. I had a lot of fearful voices in my head. I call these the evil mind meanies. Right? That as soon as stuff started to happen, I started to hear things like, I'm going to lose my business, right? I'm going to have to lay people off. Audiences are going to forget about us during our break. This is what I call these inner critics, the internal voice of fear. Again, I call them the nosy neighbors, these inner evil mind meanies, right? Just like the nosy neighbors in our story. These instantaneous fearful thoughts. So what I'd like you to do right now on a sheet of paper or whatever you want to write something down in, make 2 columns. And on one column, what I'd like you to write down are some of the messages your internal unhelpful voice is giving you about a challenging situation, like maybe the challenging situation that we're in right now. So just like I am having some of these thoughts, like we're going to go out of business, I'm going to have to lay people off, right? I'm not in a position of having to do them. These are all these voices of fear. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes right now to write down some of the unhelpful internal messages that your inner critic and your fearful voice are giving you. And I'll wait for a second. And if you want, you could even share them in the chat if you wanted to share them with everybody or just with me. I'll give you another about 30 seconds to write down any messages that your unhelpful internal voice is giving you. Exactly, right? So hurry up. I'm on the wrong path. What if I'm wrong? My work will all seem meaningless. I don't even know where to start. Right, right. I'm an imposter. Ooh, a classic, Joan. Look at that. Oh my Lord. Absolutely. All of those messages are coming from this voice that I call the evil mind meanies. It's the internal voice of unhelpful judgment, the inner critic, and it's also this internal, behind the inner critic lives this internal fearful voice. And all of those that you're writing down are variations of I'm going to fail. Right behind all of that is this big fear. I'm going to fail. This is the major message that the internal voice of unhelpful judgment, the inner critic, gives us. I'm going to fail. Now, just by the way, you should know that I'm talking about the internal unhelpful messages, the ones you're writing down that are not helping you move forward together with positivity, right? Are not helping you be productive, are not helping you focus on the problem at hand. They're just distracting you. There's also a very helpful internal voice. And I think you know the difference between the helpful voice and the unhelpful voice. The helpful voice will say stuff like, don't drive into oncoming traffic. Put on pants before you leave the house. That voice is good. You should listen to the helpful voice. That helpful voice of fear, it's good to listen to, right? Like, don't eat the green meat, right? That's helpful. I'm talking about the unhelpful internal voice. These muscles are overdeveloped in us, especially these days. We're just full of this churning internal ruminations of, I'm gonna fail, right? I'm not smart enough. I'm an imposter. I talk too much. No one's gonna be there if I need help. These are unhelpful messages. I work with so many people, hundreds of people all the time on this stuff. And it amazes me that no matter how accomplished these people are, they hear this unhelpful inner critic, this voice of fear. Because we have a helpful voice, we have an unhelpful voice, but I could never figure out for the longest time why humans are built this way. Why, when we're asked to do something risky or scary or new, is our first thought so often, I'm gonna fail, instead of, yippee, I'm gonna rock at this, right? When the shitstorm started happening with all this stuff, did anybody out there have the first thought, woohoo, this is gonna be great? Bueller, right? No, absolutely not. I mean, some people may have, and if you did, good on you, great. You should do the keynote next year for sure, because I want to know how that works. But many of us hear this unhelpful voice first. And I couldn't figure out why humans are built this way, why we instantly hear this voice. And then I imagine these two people during prehistoric times, and they're standing in the mouth of a cave. And they see a saber-toothed tiger. And the first person sees the tiger and says, ooh, danger, bad, stay away. And the second person sees the saber-toothed tiger and says, look, kitty, here, kitty, 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 kitty. What happens to that guy? Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Yeah, these tiger tidbits. We're descendants of ooh, danger, because here, kitty, kitty, kitty is dead. So this inner critic, this inner judge, this inner voice of fear, it's in our DNA. And as far as I know, we can't get it to stop. And like I say, sometimes it is helpful. But my life as an improviser has given me tools that I want to share with you today on how we can quiet that voice down, so it doesn't get in the way of the problem solving and the creative thinking and innovating that we need to do. So let's get into it. The first technique I want to tell you about how to quiet your inner critic and your internal voice of fear is this. That inner critic, that internal voice of fear, the evil mind meanies, as I call them, they are all saying beliefs, not facts. Those are all beliefs, not facts. Your evil mind meanies are lying, pants on fire liars. So this instant thought, I'm going to fail, at this moment in time, it's not true. It's just a belief that we have. We don't know how the story is going to end. I can't possibly run an improv theater online. This instant, nosy neighbor, reflexive thought, that's just a belief right now. It's not true. I should just give up. That is just a belief right now. It's not a fact. It's not true, and it's unhelpful. So, like the nosy neighbors, we need to quiet those nosy neighbors. Like the maybe farmer, maybe farmer, we need to quiet those nosy neighbors. In order to get up on stage and improvise, I always have those thoughts. I'm going to fail. This show is going to be terrible. In fact, if you ever come to our theater and another show is going on before mine or another act is starting before me and I'm standing over there on the side watching it, more times than not, I am having the thought, holy crap, I just forgot how to improvise. Or these guys are going to be so much better than me. There's no way I can be as good as them. But then they announce my name and we have to get up there and start performing. So I have to quiet those inner critics. I have to find the maybe farmer way. Because how many times have you been offered a job you've been going out for a job and you didn't get the job, right? And you're so disappointed at the time. And then it turns out in the end that allowed you to be open for this other opportunity. Or even more heartbreakingly, how many times have you been dumped by a love interest that has just been heartbreaking, right? And then 6 months later, you think, phew, dodge that bullet. This is how I know the maybe farmer was on target. Because this reflexive thought of this is the worst, I'm going to fail, is not helpful. The next technique to quiet the internal voice of unhelpful judgment is to give it a name. Like I call them the evil mind meanies, or in my school, we call it Kelvin, which is just a random name we came up for the inner critic. No offense to any Kelvins out there. I call my internal voice of fear Pip, because it feels small like a pipsqueak, but it also feels huge like a pipe bomb. I have a friend who calls his internal voice of unhelpful judgment the parrot who sits on his shoulder. I have another friend who calls the evil mind meanies the itty bitty shitty committee. So go ahead, give your inner critic, your internal voice of fear, a name. And if you want, you could type in some of the names that you've given up in the chat box. Everybody comes up with wonderful names, but whatever it is, the next step, the next technique to quiet it down once it has a name, is I want you to give it a message. And what I'd like you to say to your inner critic, your inner voice of fear, is thank you, and now pipe down. We say thank you to this inner critic because just like the ooh danger person in the mouth of a cave, this inner critic, this internal voice of fear, it's just trying to protect us. But we don't need its help right now. So we say pipe down, or when I'm feeling ornery, I'll say thank you, now shut up. Or when I'm just talking to my voice of fear, which needs to be held with a little bit more compassion, I'll say, thank you, Pip, I've got this, right? I've got this. So go ahead, talk to it. Say, thank you, now shut up. Thank you, I've got this, to quiet your inner critic. When I worked with some British people, they told me they've taken to saying, thank you, evil mind meanie, now kindly sod off. I also find it helpful to swipe left on my inner critic. When my daughter was 20 years old, she let me play with the dating app on her phone. I don't know if that makes me the coolest mom in the world or the mom with the worst boundaries ever, but anyways, I learned that in dating app parlance, swipe right means you're interested in the person, and swipe left means you're not interested in the person. And I don't know if it's very helpful for judging humans, but I do find swipe left helpful for judging my inner critic. So when I hear the evil mind meanie start up its song and dance, I just swipe left on that stuff. Right, I'm standing there before a show and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the worst. I'm never gonna be able to do this show. Swipe left. I'm terrified that I'm gonna go out of business. I'm not gonna make enough money. At this moment, those thoughts are not helpful. So I remember that those are just beliefs. They are not facts, and say thank you. Now, shut up, not helpful. Can I make a living in this new reality? That's what I'm sitting here thinking right now. And that first reflexive thought is often, I'm going to fail. And I've touched this part of my head because I think that's where that first thought comes from, this reptilian, reflexive, fear-based part of ourselves. I don't have control over my reflexive first thought. It's always going to happen. It's normal and natural. That's why we say thank you. Oh, you're here. Here you are. Great. Thanks, you're here. And then now I have some control over my second thought, which is thank you, now pipe down. Swipe left. Those are beliefs. They are not facts. So the nosy neighbors and the maybe farmer story that I told at the beginning, those are the first thought, the reflexive thought. And the maybe farmer, that is the second thought, the more reflective thought. Another technique to quiet these evil mind meanies that stop us from being productive and creative is what I call capital C curiosity. Capital C curiosity just means asking yourself the question, what would it be like not to listen to that inner critic or that internal voice of fear right now? You don't have to answer the question or even follow the train of logic for it to work. I find just asking myself, what would it be like not to listen to that voice right now is really, really helpful. So for example, I don't know if any of you are ever late to stuff, but I am sometimes. And so I'll be, let's say I'm late, I'm going to a job at a business to do a professional training program or something like that. And the ride takes me about 20 minutes and I'm late. And I find myself starting to hear all these evil mind meaning messages, which might be like, you're so unprofessional. They're going to hate you. Oh my God, why can't you get out the door? If you can't get out of the door on time, how are you ever going to be able to train them and how to communicate well? You should just turn around now and give up, right? These are all unhelpful internal messages from my evil mind meanings. So I can use capital C curiosity to ask, what would it be like not to listen to that voice right now? That just helps to put me in a more positive and helpful frame of mind. It helps to remind me that those messages are just beliefs. They are not facts. I can swipe left on all that. Another super helpful technique that I find is called reframing. We're reframing the unhelpful message to something more positive. So we're consciously moving ourselves from that first thought, the reflexive thought, the nosy neighbor, to the second thought, the reflective thought, the maybe farmer. Reframing it from something unhelpful to something positive and helpful. Recently, since we've been all locked in, my family and I got to watch that Tom Hanks movie. He's recovering very well, I hear, by the way. The Mr. Rogers movie, what's it called? The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I thought it was fantastic, but I am a huge Mr. Rogers fan. But the thing that amazed me most of all about Mr. Rogers was his ability to see the light when everybody else just sees the shadow. This is reframing, right? He would see the benefit to something instead of seeing only the negative thing. So, for example, we're in trouble. We could reframe it to, we're going to do the Macarena, all right? I have a feeling that's what Han Solo's face would look like if he were asked to do the Macarena. Both of those are equally true as far as we know. One of them is helpful and one of them is unhelpful. So we're reframing the evil mind meaning's lies to more useful, positive messages. So instead of I'm going to fail to transform at transitioning my business to online, that is the belief, unhelpful. I could reframe it to I am going to learn new ways to run a business. Or instead of the fear, I'm never going to make it through this situation, right? That's the reflexive thought. That's the automatic fear. That's the nosy neighbor. That's the belief. My job is to take a moment and to remember that those are just beliefs. They're not facts. Those are lies. And to move into the second thought frame of mind, right? Thank you. Now shut up. Swipe left and reframe it to something more helpful, like if I'm going down swinging, right? Or even I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyways. In short, reframing involves separating the belief from the fact. So instead of what I'm afraid is going to happen or what I wish were happening instead, I put the focus on what is actually happening. Again, in improvisation, it's about accepting the reality of the moment in order to move forward with positivity, right? So this reframing helps me to accept the reality of the moment so I can move forward more positively. Because it's my understanding that that's where sadness lies, the difference between what the reality is and what we wish the reality would be. That's where sadness lives. And as an improviser, my job is to tighten that up, to make that smaller so I could reframe it. Instead, I'm accepting exactly how things are. So now I'm going to ask you to do something also. So you had that note of all those your internal messages that were unhelpful on that sheet of paper that you might have written down. On the other side, I'm going to ask you to reframe those for more useful, positive messages. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that on your own and go ahead and see if you could reframe it. And if you wanted to share some of the stuff, like there's one, right? How could some more helpful, useful reframes? So go ahead and take 1 or 2 minutes. Those are great. I'll give you another 10, 15 seconds or so. Yeah, and I see some people are writing them in the chat window, which is amazing. Absolutely. So what reframing does is it helps us focus on what we can do. So because I realize, it's hard to say don't think about negative thoughts, right? You can't not think. It's like saying, don't think about George Clooney standing in his robe handing you the best cup of coffee of your life, right? You're welcome. You just thought of that. So we want to give you something to think about instead. So when you feel yourself starting to do the tango with your evil mind meanings, which by the way is so tempting, it's so tantalizing, and it's so, you use, like, part of your brain thinks if you could think your way out of the problem, you know, that these thoughts are going to be somehow helpful, but they never are. So reframing helps to give yourself something productive to think about, something helpful, something useful. Reframing helps us focus on what is actually happening and taking steps forward. I call it that just happened. This is our sort of our shorthand that we use at Happier Valley Comedy. And it comes from this story that I call the parable of Dave Razowsky, which I'd love to share with you today. Dave Razowsky is this improviser. He's from Chicago originally, and he now lives in LA. He teaches improv. And Dave Razowsky tells this story, or at least this is how I heard it. Dave was dancing at a wedding with this woman, and she was so excited to be dancing with Dave Razowsky that she took him by both shoulders and she slammed him to the ground, and his foot landed like this. And Dave claims he had the thought, that just happened. Because yes, he could have thought, lady, what's wrong with you? Oh my God, this is the worst in the world, because his foot broke. He actually broke his foot. He couldn't go to work for like 6 weeks. He couldn't even do a lot of his own grocery shopping for himself. A lot of bad things happened, but a lot of good things happened too. He had time to get off of the busy hamster wheel of life that we're all on all the time. He found time to do artwork and to start a podcast. He found out who his real friends were, because those were the folks who did his grocery shopping for him. So the shorthand, that just happened, helps us remember to accept the reality of the moment, as improvisers do, and agree to move forward together with positivity. Right? That just happened. Now, how can we move forward together? The last technique I want to share with you for how to move forward with positivity, like an improviser does, is to follow the joy and follow the ease. So like reframing, instead of just saying, don't think negative thoughts, of course, you're just going to start thinking negative thoughts. Following the joy of ease replaces the evil mind meanings messages with the thought, where is the joy in this situation? Where is the ease? And I just want to break down a little definition of what I call joy and ease for a second. So first of all, joy. My goal in life is to die having had more fun than anyone, right? And my joyride might be different than your joyride, but given the reality of any situation, I'm trying to find the most joy possible. And sometimes my joy is like, woohoo, margaritas, parties for everybody. And sometimes my joy is a quiet night at home with a good book. Sometimes my joy is getting through a hard time with a friend and getting to the other side of it. I get to define my joy, you get to define your joy, but given the reality of the situation, I am always trying to seek the most joy. And if there's a situation that's devoid of even a molecule of joy, which it kind of feels like it is sometimes these days, I substitute the word peace. Given the reality of the situation, where are moments of peace? What is the pathway of peace? So I don't feel like I'm swimming uphill, swimming uphill, which is gravitationally impossible. So I'm always seeking the joy, and I'm also seeking the ease. Now, ease is different than easy. It's easefulness. I think of ease as floating down the river in a raft, right? You stop paddling, and you just let the river take you down along with it. So given the reality of this situation, where is it taking us? Where is the place of most ease that feels the most joyful and the most easeful? So it's like that late driving story that I told you, right? I'm driving, I'm a few minutes late, I'm driving and I'm having, doing this tango with my evil mind meanies who's telling me all this crap about how I am the worst in the whole wide world. So I can use my skills to say, that's a reflexive thought. Thank you, now shut up. Not helpful right now. Those are just beliefs. What would it be like not to listen to that voice right now? And then I could see if I can find the moment of joy and ease, because this drive's going to take me 20, 25 minutes no matter how I am. So I could either spend those 20 minutes in a hot, sweaty mess, or I could roll down the window, turn up the music, and sing at the top of my lungs the whole time. One way gets me to the job, a hot mess. The other way gets me to the job relaxed and happy and with a positive air. Where is the joy? Where is the ease? Those are some techniques that I use to quiet the internal voice of unhelpful judgment and that internal voice of fear. So here are these tools that I've talked about for you today that I hope will help you quiet the evil mind meanies. And next, what's going to happen is Kelly's going to help us break out into different rooms, and I'm going to give you a little assignment.
So we've got that breakout room link. Oh, that okay.
And I'm going to talk, and I'm going to talk about it for a second. I'll talk to them about it, and then they're going to click on that link.
Okay.
This is the link with all the information on it. But I'd like you to see if you could, thinking about all those tools that I talked about, maybe in your group, in your breakout group, you can come up with one example of how you could use one of those tools in your life tomorrow. And once you've done that, because you'll have about 10 minutes or so, see if you guys can talk about how would your life change if you stopped listening to your evil mind meaning. And finally, you could talk about what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail. And by the way, as you guys are chatting, if you come up with any questions, hold on to those questions, and I'll take questions at the end or right when we're done with our breakout section, and we can chat about those. So Kelly's going to do some magic.
All right, so I shared that keynote breakout, which is a picture of this slide, because you're not going to be able to see this slide when you're in your breakout room. So if you click that most recent link in the chat, the keynote breakout.png, that'll open up in your web browser, and you'll have that available in your breakout room.
It should look like this slide that's up now.
Yep. All right, and we'll break out we'll get people into like 3 to 4 people per room. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
And let me see. I want to make sure that you're not going into a room, Pam. Oh, there we are. How do I unassign you? Okay, so Pam, you may just have to return to the main room.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Just sneak out awkwardly.
Okay.
We're all back?
Yeah.
Cool beans. Great. I'm going to take questions at the end, but right for this moment, does anybody have any questions? You can type it in the chat, or you can unmute your thingy. Any questions that came up in the breakouts? Glad. Awesome.
Yeah, someone was in a great room.
Yahoo. Yeah, the inner critic is really loud. And it is, but it is this quieting the inner critic, it's a muscle that improvisers use. And the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And that's another opportunity to reframe. So if you want, you could have the unhelpful thought, my inner critic's starting up again. I'm the worst. Or you could think, yay, I have another opportunity to strengthen my ability to quiet it down. In my classes, I give people this proportional formula for dealing with the inner critic. So after something really crappy happens, we allow ourselves to have a proportional amount of time to feel crappy about it, right? And so, for example, I'll give an example about doing a show. So if I do a show and it's 20 minutes long, and it is an absolute shit show. It is just terrible. I stunk it up. I feel like I should never improvise again. I allow myself 20 minutes to go to town with my inner critic and just like have all those thoughts like I should never improvise again, I should give up the stage, I should stop doing it, blah 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 blah, right? All of those thoughts. And I set a timer for exactly how long the show was, or a proportional amount of time. And then once that timer goes off, I am not allowed to have those thoughts anymore. Instead, the only thought I'm allowed to ruminate on is, what did I learn? What did I learn from that experience? And you find when you do it, you will keep getting tempted back into beating yourself up. And again, we strengthen that muscle to moving away from it into, what did I learn? Because in improvisation and in life, I believe it's only a mistake if you don't learn from it. I really do believe that. All right, so I've given you a whole bunch of techniques and we have a few more minutes. So I'm going to give you 2 bonus techniques for quieting the inner critic and living with more joy and ease through these turbulent times. One of the techniques is a story, actually, that you may have heard. It's kind of popular. It's a Native American story, and it goes like this. There is a grandparent who's chatting with their grandchild, and the grandparent says to the grandchild, inside each of us are 2 wolves that are constantly fighting. One of them is the wolf of hatred and war and scarcity and greed. And the other wolf is the wolf of love and abundance and kindness and peace. And they're in each of us all the time fighting. And the grandchild asks the grandparent, which one wins? And the grandparent says, the one you feed. So this is another idea about how to reframe it and to focus more on the joy and the ease. Which one do you want to feed? The negative wolf or the positive wolf? And I call this searching for positivity blueberries. So positive blueberries, this is my own thing. It's not an ancient story at all. It goes like this. This is this technique. I don't know if you've ever gone blueberry picking, but if you have, you've maybe had the experiences. You walk up to the blueberry bush and you look at it at first, and at first it looks like it has no blueberries at all. And then you look a little more and one blueberry pops up. You suddenly see one blueberry, and then you see another blueberry, and suddenly you realize the whole bush is full of blueberries. Now, if you've had that experience, it's the same thing with positivity. If you look for positivity, if you look for joy, if you look for love, if you look for the benefit of life, the light, you will see it. And likewise, if you look for the bad parts of life, the negative people, the shadow, you will see ample examples of that as well. So we get to decide. Our first reflexive thought might be to go to the fear. The fear has us go to the negative. We could take a moment. Remember, those are beliefs there, not facts. And focus instead on the positive. Does anybody, I can have a couple minutes for any questions. I don't know if anybody has any questions. You can type them in the chat box, or you can unmute and ask them here. I'll give you a couple moments. So if virtually, you would ask questions by either unmuting or typing them in the chat box, and I'll be able to see them and answer them. And I see Charles says that it's when we get older, it seems to go the other way. And I kind of have found that too. I'm on the other side of 50, and I found it, the closer I got to 50, especially as a woman, excuse my French, the less F's I have to give, right? And it does, it starts going the other way a little bit because we get stronger. Our muscle gets stronger on quieting the BS.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Oh, go ahead.
I think that you can end up, not. I mean, naturally, as a kid, you don't have a whole lot of it, or maybe you do, depending on your.
Yeah, a lot of kids are dealing with a ton of anxiety. In fact, I often have parents come up to me and said, "Can you do this for kids? Like, this would be so helpful." We have a question about how to deal with rejection in particular, and that is another opportunity to reframe. Right? Again, the story is not over. So if you were here at the beginning and you heard the story of the maybe farmer, the practice is to get into the maybe farmer way. Because like we were saying before, the event is the event, right? This, I'm not with this person. I was rejected by this person. Even rejection is a judgment. But it's our judgment is how if we're gonna feel very good or very bad about it. So we kind of get a little bit more leeway with that. So you sort of practice training your mind to come back into accepting the reality of the moment. I'm not with this person anymore. And how can I move forward with positivity? And that for me is what did I learn from it? It's only a mistake if you don't learn from it. Any other questions? No? Awesome. Well, you can get in contact with me if you want on the little sheet of paper, or it's not a sheet of paper, a virtual paper with the links you have. My contact information is there. And I really hope that I have helped give some of you some techniques to quiet the inner critic and this inner fearful voice so you can agree to the reality of this moment that we're all finding ourselves in. And we can move forward with positivity because we're all improvisers today. And the world needs you and the world needs what you have to offer. So I really hope you're able to use these skills in order to problem solve and innovate and figure out wonderful new ways of doing things so we could bring more joy and ease to the days ahead. I want you to live as joyfully and easefully as possible. Thank you.
I did. I was taking it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Questions I'll look out here.
Yay! Yay! Everybody, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.